Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. I hope you all enjoyed a couple drinks upstairs, get to know each other. Before we get things kicked off, I'm going to tell you a little bit about IoT Waterloo. We're a peer-to-peer network group that's been sharing knowledge since 2014 now. And we absorb best practices through over 1,900 members in an emerging space so that we can all learn together. We've been doing it for 2014, as I mentioned, and we're hearing from many speakers leading in the IoT industry. Those are just a few shots of some of the people that have been to previous events, from beacons, RFID technology, smart cities, industrial IoT, cryptography, the list goes on, startups, security, and it goes on and on. So you're in the right place if you're interested in that type of knowledge. And tonight's event, as well as others, can't be brought to us without the support of our sponsors. So the IEEE Young Professionals, eScript and Shopify Plus are generous enough to help us make this event tonight. We're going to hear from Rob Lampert of eScript, going to tell us a little bit about what they're doing, as well from Uche of Hitch and Bjorn from Grobo. If you haven't already met them upstairs during the networking, you're going to learn a little bit more about their stories, so that's going to be exciting. And then, so we're changing it up this time. Usually we break up a networking session in the middle of a talk, but we're actually going to just do two and then close the night with networking, so that I don't have to rally everybody back and forth. So we'll do that. The goal of the event is to meet somebody new, learn something new. Can I get a show of hands of how many people have been to an event? One of our previous ones? Okay, and how many people are new? All right, so there's lots of a mix here to definitely meet some new people and then hopefully learn something new. So without further ado, let me welcome Rob to the stage, and he'll share us what's going on with eScript.
eScript is a German-based company that has recently opened an office in Waterloo, and now it's moved to Kitchener, to Waterloo from Kitchener. And we also have recently acquired another small Waterloo company called TrustPoint. TrustPoint has had a big effect in the IoT space, and now with the backing of eScript, and behind eScript is another big company you probably know called Bosch. So you could have the kind of innovative work that is coming from TrustPoint, but with the stability and long-term goals and power of the big companies. So that's one thing that's going on. eScript is an automotive security company mostly, so we do a lot of automotive consulting. So if you need IoT, if you need automotive security, we're right in town and we're ready to work with you. Also, if you're interested in security, embedded security, web security, then come along and talk with us because we need lots of people. So we're very happy to sponsor the event tonight and look forward to talking with you later.
Okay, we're going to get the second speaker right up to the stage. So before I call up Bjorn, I'll tell you a little bit about what they're doing. Bjorn's going to be talking about a startup, Grobo, an intelligent home plant growing system, for those of you who haven't seen it already upstairs. Grobo is empowering people to easily control what they consume so that we can all live healthier lives. Grobo is applying cutting-edge technology with the latest horticulture research to build solutions that will help people grow their own fresh food and medicine and become more connected with the plants in their home. Please join me in welcoming Bjorn Dawson to the stage.
Perfect. This is an awesome turnout tonight. I'm really excited to be here with you guys, and the fact that we actually have a unit with us is also very exciting, and we can finally show we're quite proud of it. So today I'll talk more about the IoT side than the business side of what we're doing. I'll tell you a bit about our journey and how we made it this far. And so obviously we do growing systems, but this is where it started. This started about 3.5, 4 years ago in my personal quest to grow food indoors. I built this frame. What you're seeing over is actually drop cloths that painters would use. It was a mini greenhouse. And on the right is my first introduction into IoT. I spent a ton of hours looking online, trying to figure out how to do a stepper motor that would open a vent, how to program this little touch screen. It was touch, I could actually go between these screens. And right from the start, I wanted to automate this entire system because one of the things I hate about gardening outside is the actual amount of work that it takes and the time and the weeding and all of that. And so I just wanted to put in seeds and end up with the final product. So from the start, we're working on IoT, and this is where it began. Then we moved forward a little bit. We took a step in the right direction, I would say, because that big system was just too big. I lived with it in my living room for 3 or 4 months. It took up almost half the living room and produced just about nothing. So we went to smaller systems, and they were pods and they can connect together, and that's when Grobo really started. We started on these ones about 3 years ago, and it took us about 1.5 years probably to make it to that prototype right there. That's because I started it alone, slowly brought on a co-founder, and moved up. But when we moved to this, then we became more advanced. We had these nice boards, and they were Bluetooth now. Problem is, I'm not an electrical engineer. I had somebody design it. They never worked. We never plugged them in. And I learned that I needed a co-founder in this space so we could actually do IoT correctly. Because as somebody with a business and mechanical engineering background, I can research it a ton, but I don't have the time to go as deep as we have to go to do IoT correctly. Not just to connect to the internet for the sake of connecting to the internet, but to make something really work. So we did this, and then about 1.5 years ago now, not this past January, the one before that, we realized that most of our customers wanted to grow cannabis. And so we needed a bigger system to let them do that. And the customers that want to grow cannabis are also willing to pay money. And so we can develop this larger system. And this is what you would see today. So this is what's upstairs. This is the Grobo 1. They're $1,700 US, which, if you're growing cannabis, actually works out quite well. But what it allows us really to do is to create an IoT system that automates every aspect of the plant. And so I know it's a little bit taboo to some people, but we would generally equate this to the fact that the internet is incredibly fast because of porn. That's what came first, right? That's how we developed the technology that we all use today for IoT and for the next advancements. And so we want to completely change how people grow food. We want you to grow everything in your home that's possible to grow because it's cheaper, it's better for you, it's better for the environment, for a whole host of reasons. But this is step one. And then I'll get into how that data actually works. And it looks beautiful in homes. So we created this, we launched it for the first time last fall. We had hundreds of articles, millions of video views. We've got hundreds of orders now, which is really exciting as we push forward to actually build this. So we've been lucky in that we have a lot of validation for what we're doing. And what we're really doing at the core is not just this one form factor that I'm showing you, because obviously it's changed a few times, but the vision has remained the same. And we're doing IoT gardening. So we want to grow plants better by using the data that's available to us today because of the internet. And we can do that because every single plant is different, right? If I'm going to grow a strawberry versus a head of lettuce, they're both going to want different things at different times. But we don't really know what they actually want because if I grow a head of lettuce here and a head of lettuce here, they're also going to be a little bit different. So we need to pay attention to what that individual seed, that individual plant is doing in order to tweak the settings a little bit throughout the lifetime of that plant and get the best possible growth. And so those differences are what drive us forward. And we can eventually, using them, hit a point where you could grow a beautiful basil plant like that within 2 weeks. Now for anybody who's ever gardened, that seems absolutely impossible. This probably takes about 1.5 to 2 months, and it's not going to be that full, and it really won't look that nice. But I've seen a plant grow this fast in 2 weeks in Guelph, but it was in a $10 million laboratory that was fully controlled, that could do this closed loop stuff that IoT enables us to do. And what they do is they have these systems up top, and they have 3 different ones, these chambers. I think each one is a few $100,000. And what we've tried to do is we've now taken that down to the price point we're selling our product at, and instead of having 3 of them, we can have 500, 1,000, 5,000, and get the data from what every single person is doing to process and improve. So this is sort of the long term of where we want to go, is bring that optimization to everybody. And then the next step in that optimization is taking the same seed for lettuce and growing them completely differently. So these 3 lettuce heads are actually from the exact same type of seed. The one on the left was grown under white light, the one in the center was under red, and the one on the right was under blue. They look different and they taste different and they're different sizes. We can do that to pretty well every single plant that's out there if we have the data to figure out how to do it. So this is one of the next phases, and I was actually reading an article yesterday because obviously we've had some sunshine today, everyone's feeling a little better with the vitamin D. It turns out that with the right lighting, you can activate more vitamin D production in plants. That would be pretty cool. If during the winter we're actually able to eat more vitamin D naturally. And again, this is IoT and what we can do with it. So how do we actually implement this? Because it's a grand vision. It's many, many steps away from where we are today. I can't tell you we figured everything out. That would be a total lie. But we have figured out how to connect to the internet. We figured out how to get the data. And then the next step is how do we actually process it correctly. So if you're a user, what we're trying to do is simplify the process. So you would go into our app, you'd select a recipe that we've pre-created for your plant. It gives you now an overview of how tall your plant is, how full the water reservoir is, all the information that you actually care about. And you can see some of the specific settings. You don't need to know what nutrients are being dosed, but we do, and we're constantly monitoring those levels. And I'll dig into that as well. The other side of it is you can actually see a history of the data. This gets pulled from everything that we're bringing in. And so about every 2 to 3 minutes, we're taking data readings from all kinds of sensors. Interior temperature and humidity, exterior pH, contaminant levels in the water gives us an idea of how much your plant is drinking or eating, and so what nutrients have to go next. On the back side, this is where it gets fun. So our customers never see this side. It's generally reserved for Stephen, who's with me today and does all of our horticulture stuff. If you have gardening questions, he's got the toque on. But we are actually taking the plant growth that people would say would be sort of one step. And in this particular plant, we've broken it down into 11 different stages of growth. So we've gone past the first seedling stage and grow and flower to going even more granular. And that's because we have a better idea of what the plants are doing. And in each stage, we'll actually change the lighting that we're giving the plant. So we have over 50 LEDs, 8 different colors. And so if you make the blue a little bit higher, you can have a broader leaf of plant. And then you can get into one of my favorites actually, which in this one's showing 0, but this far red color, it actually simulates the sunset. And if you do that, that tells the plant it's time to go to sleep, it's time to produce the chemicals you need at night. And so it begins producing those chemicals about 2 hours faster than it otherwise would if you just turn off the lights like inside a normal indoor growing system. So doing the little things like that, we're starting to see some really, really great results in terms of how well our grows are going. Then we go one level deeper. Now we're actually looking at the data that's in there. And so we want to know every reading that we're constantly taking with this system, what the water level is, the inside temperature. I think we have water level down to about 0.5 millimeter now in our watering system. So we know kind of where your roots are starting to hit it. And then it's this data that we take and we start to process. And so these 2 graphs I've pulled out to show you guys. The first one would be our light temperature. So our LEDs are incredibly powerful, which means they produce a lot of heat, and we're constantly watching to make sure that they're within safe limits and nothing's going wrong. So we can see, okay, perfect, we have daylight and nighttime, and everything is functioning correctly, and we're not having huge temperature sways in that one. Now that's more of a safety graph that we're able to see, but it gives you an idea of the scheduling that's actually happening with them. Down on the bottom here is a little bit more interesting, is that we've got constant pH across 2 days, and suddenly there's this big dip. And now we get to figure out, is that hardware? Is there a spike in the electricity? What's causing these sort of anomalies to happen? Because then it comes back to the right level, and then there's some changes. And so as those changes begin to occur, we learn more about not only the plant, but about the hardware and the electronics and everything else that we're dealing with in our system that we might not otherwise catch if we just took a single reading here and there. And then this would be one of the other ones as well, where this is actually watching the level of contaminants in the water. And so when we say contaminants, it's parts per million, and we're talking actually nutrients a lot of the time, right? And so here we can see that it's relatively consistent, and over time it slowly starts to drop, and that's because the plant is slowly taking out some of the nutrients from the water. And that's incredible information for us to have. Again, we still have some weird readings that we need to pull out, but looking at the broader curves, we're able to pull in some information that a normal farmer, home grower, anybody that's doing would not find, because they're going to test the water once every few days, for example. So all of this allows us to eventually get towards that end goal that we're going to. That end goal could look something like this. This is from 2010. It's a concept garden that Hyundai created. We have our own that we think are nicer, but we're not ready to share them yet, unfortunately. But the idea is that you're feeding this family of 4. And I was just doing the math yesterday with the latest figures on what families spend in the US, and I think that we can easily save you, or at least customers in the US, about $200 a month in greens, dark greens, vegetables, and some of the fruits that would be really easy to move to a home growing system. And so if we can grow plants fast enough, which I believe we can, as the price of LEDs comes down, I think we're going to see this happen within the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to be quite quickly, or it will happen quite quickly just because of technology and data and optimization. So that's where I think we're going. And now I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have about IoT or the company or anything else.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Bjorn? I'll start off then. So that lighting was an interesting thing that I had no idea that it worked that way. How long did it take? Was that an accidental discovery from playing with lights that you learned that?
That's unfortunately my co-founder digging super deep into technical documents for, I don't know how many months he researched LEDs for. He designed our whole stack. But what he found was this sort of obscure piece of research that somebody had done somewhere that's not normally implemented in growing systems, because people normally create lights that just turn on or off. We decided as a team that it was better to have each one going from 0 to 100% intensity. But most people would never do that, and having this on 24/7 doesn't really make sense. And I guess to give you guys a bit of background on lighting as well, when you pass by a greenhouse, you're going to see upstairs the unit, it has a purple hue to it. That's because we only do, in general, blue and red lights, because plants are green, and they just reflect that green light back to us. So you're wasting energy if you're hitting them with green light, is the general consensus. But again, even there, some people are adding green lights because they think it kind of helps. So the research is pretty early, and we're hoping to add to it now with some of the capabilities we have.
Anybody else?
It's just a question about the system. How much energy does it consume?
Yeah, so you're looking, it's about half the energy a fridge would consume actually, because we're not running big compressors or anything, it's all LEDs. So you're looking at maybe $60 to $70 a year for power.
Hey, so I noticed you had like 5 pods in each machine, and I'm not sure if you touched on what those 5 pods do. Maybe I missed that, but could you go over that?
Cool, yeah, I'll pull it up so everyone knows what you're referring to. These 5 at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so those are our nutrients. So they're nutrient 1 to 5. It would be sort of, they do pH adjustments. They're adding like different nutrients depending on which phase of growth that you're actually in. We add different nutrients depending on if we figure out that you're using reverse osmosis water or tap water, or we have very hard water in Waterloo, so we need to account for that a little bit. And so that's what those are there for, those 5.
And is it the same nutrients for like every plant, or do you have to change them depending on which plants you use?
So it's the same base nutrients, but how much we'll use is completely different. And so if you're using, we'll start with water, right? If you're using water that's really like high in pH, then we're constantly just going to be using pH down. We probably will never touch pH up. If you're using, sort of each plant, depending on how your water, what your water quality is, will be different, but the basic nutrients are the same. And then we'll dose it according to that data that we're pulling in.
I just had a question regarding, I noticed that you kind of wanted to go for the kind of the dummy approach where it's very not user controlled. Is there an element that you're going to bring in where it actually is user controlled for the more advanced gardeners?
Yeah, we've talked about that. That adds a ton of value to us if somebody really knows what they're doing and can play with it, and we can figure out how well that's going. So we'll add some of it. but not everything that some of the traditional growers want. We see that a lot of growers, just from like a market fit, if they're going to do that, they probably have a grow tent and a massive system, and they're ready to spend hours on it per day or per week. Whereas that's not generally our target customer. But there is a niche in that group of those growers that are really experienced, and they want the data that we have. And so they're willing to buy our system to learn how to grow best and then replicate it in their system. So we've certainly had that happen. We've had scientific labs reach out to us. I think even this morning somebody wanted to use our lighting system to mimic the sun and like try to balance that correctly in their lab. So it's a mix, and we'll do something along that line, yeah.
I'm not a green thumb, I'm a software engineer by trade, but is pollination something you take care of as well, or is that even an issue?
Again, it depends on the plant. Like we can't take care of it because it involves multiple plants for that to happen. But yeah, there's like tomatoes, for example. If you just kind of vibrate them with a toothbrush, or if you shake them, our system has some air moving through it constantly. Like that will help with some of the self-pollination. And outside of that, there's Q-tips, all kinds of different things you can read up online for how to make it happen.
So your system depends on lots of sensors to read lots of measurements. I was just wondering how you got about finding all these sensors, like sourcing them, figuring out whether such a sensor for such an attribute exists or doesn't exist. And just curious, is there any attributes that you would love to measure but you haven't figured out yet?
Sensors suck. Like basic line, we've spent way too long. That's a great question. Yeah, there's definitely things we'd like to measure. Some sensors are just way too expensive. The bigger thing that we're seeing is accuracy of sensors over time is a big issue. When you get them out of the box, that's okay. When you want to build a product that a customer is going to use for 3 to 5 years, that becomes a problem. So for us, like pH sensors are one of the big issues we have. So we've gone out, I think we probably own 5 to 10 different pH sensors that we've been testing for months through different trials, trying to figure out which one could work. And even then, people are going to have to replace them. Like the sensor is just not good enough, and there's nobody in the market today that builds a sensor good enough at a price point that we can put in a consumer product. So we're a little bit limited in that manner, but yeah, sensors, I guess on a very basic level, if you're just looking temperature, humidity, those are cheap, inexpensive. I mean, they're super accessible. As soon as you go to something more unique, it's really, really difficult to select which ones you want to work with. And it would be the same for Wi-Fi chips. Wi-Fi chips is also something that we spent a little while picking between different ones and looking at. Some are cheaper but harder to implement, some are much more expensive but really easy to implement. And where do you find that balance for what you want to do and how many units you're going to sell and all that?
We got time for one more?
Sort of two, actually, but the first is I've looked at a number of these systems and I've been interested in it for a couple of years. And one of the challenges things like container farms have is because the moisture and everything is just dealing with mold and things like that. Do you have any problems, or have you run into any problems with your system with that kind of thing?
You say container, do you mean like the shipping container? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a question of scale, right? So ours is constantly pulling in air from your home and then cycling it through, and it's going right back out to your home. We can change the air in our system about 3 times or 4 times a minute. So we don't have that problem.
You don't run into that?
We don't run into that. We only have one plant. Whereas a lot of people grow food and shipping containers, and that's what he's alluding to, where you would have hundreds of heads of lettuce in there in a very tight, confined space. And absolutely, that's a problem there.
And the other thing is Caleb Harper and Food Computer from MIT. Do you guys, have you collaborated at all or looked at what they've kind of done, or is that totally separate?
If you take a look, I think they have a really cool way of explaining what they're doing. And so they would say there's like a food computer, and then you get up to a server, which is closer to what we're eventually looking at, and a larger system. I really like what they're doing. We haven't spoken specifically with them yet, because they're still, I think they do a great job of presenting themselves. I think on the ground level, they say everything's open source, but I haven't been able to actually see a lot of what I want to see yet. And so they're still figuring out how they make their model work as well. So, yeah.
Everybody, round of applause for Bjorn. few closing remarks before we get into the last networking session. So, thanks obviously to Uche and Bjorn for sharing your stories with us. That's the point of this event, is to learn a few things differently, that people are always solving problems in unique ways. So hopefully we can continue to move on forward and keep learning new stuff. And then as well, events are only possible from our sponsors. So if you would join me in thanking IEEE Young Professionals, eScript, and Shopify Plus for their support to make this event happen tonight. Thank you guys. Did I turn that on? Isn't it nice when they buy a drink? So we have 1 hour before I kick you out, because the cleaners do have to come in and we have to be out of here by 9. So thank you all for coming out and continuing to be proud supporters of Violet Waterloo. Let's go upstairs to grab a drink.